and it would be their private issue.
Well, it obviously hasn't been ignored, has it? I mean, we've had gay activists who've been murdered. Just last year, we saw a leading gay activist murdered in your country. We now have a parliament which is considering new legislation which would massively increase the punishments for homosexuality from up to 14 years in prison to a new punishment of life in prison. What is your view as president of that proposal?
My view is that I do not support promotion of homosexuality, but I do not support persecution or discrimination of homosexuals as our society has always done. We never discriminated them. We never marginalized them or discriminated against them.
But Mr. President,
what people resent is promotion.
If the Parliament passes this legislation pushing for life imprisonment for homosexuality, will you block that legislation?
It will depend what the life sentence is for. Is it for promotion, for instance, recruiting young children into that practice by offering money? That's where the problem is. Inducement, manipulating, using money which they collect from the West. That's what I would also not like.
You yourself said just a couple of years ago, you said gay relationships are against God's will. You clearly believe there is a religious as well as a legislative and political need to take action against homosexuality.
Well, it is true that God cannot, it must be, I have not studied the science of how people become homosexuals, but certainly the normal way is to be heterosexual, because that's what nature created us for. But maybe there are some exceptions for some good scientific reasons. If they are there, our culture is keep your private life to yourself. Do not impose it on others. Do not promote it. Just keep your own confidential sexual life to yourself.
A final thought on this. Barack Obama, for one, but other Western leaders as well, have said that they will tie future aid and development funding in a host of countries, including yours, to what they see on the human rights front, but particularly on these gender and sexual identity issues. How do you feel about that?
That would be their biggest mistake, because they should be very careful about Black Africa. Black Africa are humble people. We never impose our views on anybody else. We are not like Europeans or like Arabs who want to impose their views. I normally tell people that when I hear Arabs talking of haram, that's something which is haram. I always tell them that my list of haram is much longer than that one of the Arabs. I don't eat fish because I call it snake. I don't eat chicken because I think if you eat chicken, you will be unstable. I don't eat pigs. I don't eat very many of those things which you eat. Even when I come here, I have a problem of what to eat. But I keep this to myself. This is the difference with the black people.
Well, if you're determined to keep it to yourself, can I take it then that you will sack your Minister for Ethics, who just a few days ago took it upon himself to invade a meeting of gay human rights campaigners, close down the meeting, force them all out. Will you now sack him? Because he invaded their personal space.
I will have to study what they were doing. You see what, this question, I have told you, homosexuality is not is if it is personal, you are not discriminated, you are not persecuted. But when you induce young people, so it depends on what they were doing. Those homosexuals, what were they doing?
You told me when I mentioned Barack Obama's position on this that you said, Western governments and leaders, they need to be careful. Let's just explore that idea a bit further. You said not so long ago, Western countries do not listen carefully. They are full of themselves. They think they know everything. Sounds like you are rather frustrated in your relations with what are supposed to be some of your closest partners in Western capitals.
Well, they are our close partners, but they should avoid, like this one of saying, tying aid to promoting homosexuality. I can tell you many African people will not accept it.
Let's,
and it will be a very big mistake.
Yeah, let's just talk then about what you are doing with the United States, for example. At the moment, I believe they have 100 military advisors working closely with your government. I know they've given you tens of millions of dollars of military assistance, all of it, I think, aimed to fight the Lord's Resistance Army, the insurgent group who've done so much damage, killed so many people in the north of your country. Is it your belief that with US assistance, even though the leader Joseph Kony is no longer in your country, that you can now, once and for all, destroy the Lord's Resistance Army?
We defeated that group. That's why they fled very far from Uganda. They are now in Central African Republic and very, very far, about 1,000 miles away.
So what are these military advisors for then?
To help working with the US people and with those countries where the remnants of Kony's people are, to help those countries to stop Kony from killing and kidnapping.
So I suppose my question is, are Ugandan forces going to go after Kony and his people, wherever they are?
They're already doing it.
So you're going to go into the Central African Republic?
We are already there.
Yeah, and you're going to take this to the very end. You think there is a military solution to this, do you?
Oh yes, oh yes. There is a military solution. It has already pacified the whole of Uganda. The whole of Southern Sudan is peaceful from Kony activities. He's only now in Central African Republic. We can hunt him there, and there are just a few remnants. They are much less than they used to be.
If that is your belief, that you can find a military solution to the LRA problem, do you believe the same thing about Somalia, where you have got thousands of troops, the biggest single contributor to the African Union military mission in Somalia? Do you believe that if you ramp up the mission even more, as is being discussed right now, that you can destroy the Al-Shabaab movement in Somalia?
Somalia is a different issue. It's not just military, it is also political. So you cannot just talk of a military solution. A military solution is part of the effort, but it must be accompanied by political negotiations and ensuring that there is an accountable government in some foreseeable future.
But to be clear, you do want to see, I think the current mission is about 12,000 strong and pretty much half of the troops are from Uganda. You want that force to go up to about 17,000,
yes,
right?
yes.
And how many men are you prepared to put on the ground in Somalia?
Well, Uganda is a country of 34 million people. So we are not short of people. We can mobilize any size of army to help our people.
I just wonder if there is a danger here for Uganda. I think in 2010 you had a terrible incident on the streets of Kampala. A bomb went off, we believe planted by the Islamist militants from Somalia, killed more than 70 people. There is a danger, is there not, of Islamists, jihadis, looking at Uganda and seeing a target that they want to hit.
Those jihadists are really non-African in their attitudes. I've told you about the attitude of the black people. I've told you how I have got my long list of haram, but I never impose it on anybody else. It is my private business.
When you speak like this, Mr. President, it makes me feel that you don't want to see Islam in Africa. You seem to be suggesting to me that somehow Africa is not compatible with Islamic belief and thought.
Not at all, not at all, because 12% of the people of Uganda are Muslims.
Sure, and you can look around Africa. There are huge Muslim communities all over the continent.
Many of the people in my party are Muslims. Muslims are my biggest supporters, but our Muslims do not engage in that type of chauvinism. They keep their views to themselves, their beliefs to themselves. So do the Christians, so do the traditional groups. That's how we live in harmony.
I just wonder whether you look at your long rule and at your your beyond borders engagements with your military forces, at a long and extraordinarily costly engagement in the Democratic Republic of Congo from 98 to 2003, the forces that you've now got in Somalia, the forces you've got in Central African Republic fighting the LRA, whether you believe that in the end you've resorted too often to military solutions.
No, you need to remember the history of Africa. Our brothers in Mozambique got their freedom because they were assisted by Tanzania, by Zambia. That's how they were able to defeat the Portuguese. We were able to defeat Idi Amin because we were assisted by Tanzania, by Zambia, by Mozambique. Africa has come this far because where we work together, we move forward. We worked together and defeated the white racists in Southern Africa, in Mozambique, in Zimbabwe, in Angola. We defeated Idi Amin, and we are ready to work together to defeat these foreigners who are coming with these chauvinistic ideas from the Middle East to implant them in our continent. In our continent, we black people, we live and let live. We never try to impose our views on anybody else. Like this business of saying, I will not give you aid unless you change your position on homosexuals. And yet for us, we have got our own way of how we have dealt with homosexuals before we even came in contact with the Europeans. Why don't they let them handle it our way?
Keep out.
Absolutely.
Before we end, then, before we end, Mr. President, a man you know well, George Kanyahamba, who's a former minister, I think he was a former Supreme Court Justice for you. He said not long ago, he said, if the Yoweri Museveni of 1986 were to meet the Yoweri Museveni of today, they would fight on sight. In fact, he said they would probably shoot each other. Is that true?
No, it is the same Yoweri Museveni. He was for democracy and for socio-economic transformation. It's the same Yoweri Museveni, no change at all.
Are you sure he's as convinced and as strictly sticking to his principles today as he was then?
Absolutely, even more than that time, because I'm now more informed. I have got more facts, more exposure. I know how to run governments, which I didn't know very well at the beginning. I was just an idealist, but I know how to deal with the policy issues now.
President Museveni, we have to end there, but thank you very much for being on Hard Talk.